So yes, today we are wrapping up our May series, Listen to Your Heart. I just need a little space today. Here we go. All right. So we started by looking at this idea of soul. As soul as meaning that inner power, that inner presence that is within each of us, that space that has never been hurt, harmed, or hindered. Knowing that when we come into right relationship with our soul, listening to that divine urge flowing through us, getting into that flow state, that we can experience enriching relationship, personal empowerment, and fulfilling work. The next week, we followed that by really talking about the idea of listening to our heart, to that wisdom of our heart, that inner pulse that is moving through us. And notice that when we practice listening with our hearts, that we are able to be more authentic with others and to come across with compassion and really showing up as the listener. That is what our heart is guiding us to do, to listen, to be present, and to know that truly there's only one thing going on, and that is spirit expressing through each of us. And then we follow that, listening to our heart, by talking about the zone of genius, and that we each have unique gifts and talents, our own stories and life experience that has brought us to this very day, this very time in which we are here with something unique to share, something to give, to contribute to the greater unfoldment of this world and the collective consciousness. So as we get into living in our zone of genius and out of our comfort zone, out of our zone of excellence, as we step into breaking that limit on our zone of genius, we can be more fully expressed and listening to our heart and allowing that divine urge to come through us as we contribute to this world. And so that leads us to today. And today we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about what is mine to do.
What is mine to do?
What is mine to do?
You know, I'm still reeling from that reading.
Yeah.
I don't know about you all, but that was such a powerful reading. And thank you so much, Tracy Brown, for writing and committing to that reading. You know, Raymond Charles Barker said that all creation starts with desire, that God desired self-expression and the cosmos was born. The desires of your heart, you see, are the possibilities that can be manifested in your experience. And Saint Teresa of Avila wrote that my life is the life of the divine made manifest. Spirit works through me in the world. I love that. Spirit works through me in the world. These hands are the hands of God. What is mine to do? What actions am I to take to live my call? Spirit has no body but your body. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which Spirit sees compassion in this world. Yours are the feet with which Spirit walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which Spirit blesses all of the world. Yours are the hands. Yours are the feet. Yours are the eyes. You are our Spirit's body, and Spirit has no body now on earth but you. You have been elected simply by coming here to be Spirit's body on this earth. And of course, our beloved Dr. Holmes clearly states that the birth of the soul into the light of Spirit is an awakening to the realization that God has been with us all the time, that we are the energy, the vibration of God, not in the hereafter, but right now, right here, right now. It is our true nature. We are the one and only unique expression of Spirit, and we are here to embody this truth and to wake up to our own divinity. We are here to stop playing small. We're here to be big for God. So I want to begin this morning on what's mine to do. I want to start with sharing a true story with you all Actually, it was an interview, and the interview was with Reverend John Lee Clary and it took place on a British show entitled Enough Rope. And the interviewer was Andrew Denton. Now, before Reverend John Clary became a reverend, he was a former imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. And the whole interview is about his relationship in 1979 with Reverend Wade Watts, who was a black man who was the state leader for the NAACP, and an individual who worked very closely with Dr. Martin Luther King. John Clary tells the story of how he agreed to do this radio debate with Reverend Watts. And when he met Reverend Watts at the radio station, Reverend Watts caught him off guard by sticking out his hand, introducing himself and saying, "Hello, Mr. Clary, I just want to tell you that I love you and God loves you," which completely took the 22-year-old John Clary by surprise. And as a reflex, he shook his hand, which, by the way, is the number one rule, number one rule, which is a violation of the Klan. Mr. Clary then proceeds to call the Reverend names, which was met with the reply of, "God bless you, Johnny. You cannot do enough to make me hate you. I'm going to love you and pray for you whether you want me to or not." A few years later, Mr. Clary and the Klan, which they continued throughout the years, continued their campaign against Reverend Watts by driving past his house and calling him names. The only response was, "God bless you. God bless you." So Johnny, acting out of desperation, decided to burn a cross across the street outside of Reverend Watts's house. And the Reverend came out and asked the Klan members if they needed hot dogs and marshmallows for their barbecue. Can you all picture this? So Johnny goes on to say in the interview that out of desperation, while watching the Reverend one day, they see him go into a restaurant to eat lunch. They get about 30 Klan members together, and they walk into the restaurant and they surround the table where he's sitting with a chicken in front of him, preparing to eat his lunch. As they walk up to him, John Clary says, "Boy, this is a restaurant for white people only, and I'm going to make you a promise right here and right now. We're going to do the same thing to you that you do to that chicken. So think real hard before you touch that chicken." So the Reverend looked at Johnny, and he looked at the Klan, and he picked up the chicken, and he kissed it. As soon as he kissed it, the whole restaurant erupted in laughter, including all the Klan members. This was a moment. This was a moment. And Johnny says that that is how one black man defeated the whole KKK, because after that day, he never bothered him again. Wow. And here's what happened from that moment. Johnny began to struggle with the beliefs of the Klan. Johnny turned his life around and began speaking to thousands of school children around the world. His motivational talks giving kids the skills they needed to avoid involvement in racism and violence. So here's the thing about this story. We are the power on earth made manifest. We are the body of God made manifest on earth. And we are all a choice as to how we use the power that we've been given. You see, you're not merely here to survive. You're not merely here to be silent. The world is not a way station to wait and do nothing until we reach some far off heaven. You're here to create an anchor in the ever-expanding good that heaven is within you, and through your words and deeds and through your actions. This ever-expanding good, not only for yourself, but those around you. You know, here's the thing. Everybody wants to get into heaven, but nobody wants to die. And we've got to stop dying to these old beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah. We are the ones, the time is now. We are always at choice. You know, what I find so moving about that story is that moment, that divinely inspired moment when Reverend Watts picked up that chicken and kissed it. See, that moment was a moment of creativity. It was a quantum leap above the conscious conditioned, or the kind of unconscious, but the conditioned thought patterns, that place that we're often in, which is attack, defend, attack, defend, attack, defend. But then there was an insight, an aha, and in that moment, the energy totally shifted. And there was a shift, and that shift created such a huge ripple effect that would go on to see John Clary turn his life around and speak out against racism. The mind is so conditioned with certain thought patterns in our collective mind, yet the more we practice, we can begin to rise above to higher consciousness. So in each moment, we know that we are always at choice. And do you want to be choosing from a default pattern, from a conditioned place of the collective consciousness, or are you saying yes to choose from a higher consciousness? And if you are, then it takes practice. It takes practice to be in this place where you can tune in an instant and choose a higher thought. So the more we practice meditation, mindfulness, prayer, that we turn to these spiritual practices we have, this is one way in which we begin to retrain our mind so that we can have those experiences of creativity, of insight, so we can speak up in such a way that makes a tremendous impact. Mark Nepo, in his book, 7,000 Ways to Listen, says, because the mind is a hungry tiger that can never be satisfied, that which is timeless swims in and out of our hands, bringing us forward into places we wouldn't go. So listening to what we're not yet aware of involves silencing the tiger and keeping our hands open so we can feel when something timeless moves through us. We can feel that something timeless is that insight, that inspiration, that divine urge within us that is seeking to experience an evolution in our consciousness. So let us take, for example, the recent story of the woman in Central Park. So if we white people, I'm speaking to my fellow white folks now, if we simply look at that story and judge the woman, call her a racist, and move on feeling righteous that we have called out her behavior, we miss the opportunity for a bigger change and growth. The opportunity is for us to look at our own unconscious bias, to confront it, to challenge it, and to choose a new thought. That is the path of collective evolution. It is our responsibility to look at even the most insidious ways that this shows up, this unconscious bias and racism shows up, and take the responsibility to change it. This is how we do our part in the collective consciousness. This is not to say that we shouldn't hold the woman accountable for her actions. It's a both and. But if we just call her out and do nothing right here, we too are part of the problem. We can look at her actions and really begin to dissect what we saw. For many of you that saw that video, look at it and what do you see? There's a moment in the beginning where there is the unconscious bias that is a reaction of fear. And then there's a moment where it shifts, and it shifts to a more explicit bias. When she chooses to say, I will call the police and tell them that an African-American man has threatened me, knowing the great consequences that comes from that. That is her consciously using her power and privilege to oppress. And that is not okay. That is not okay. So we have to be willing to really dissect these things and turn within to challenge those narrative, challenge those conditions, thoughts, and to notice that within us that just wants to pull away, especially as white women that wants to say, well, I'm not that. I'm not racist. I wouldn't do that. This isn't about you. And it is about you if you're willing to look within. It's our work to unravel the societal created isms and stand for truth, stand for beauty, stand for abundance, stand for justice, stand for freedom, stand for harmony, stand for power for all. To notice when those fear thoughts arise within us, especially those of judgment or those of judgment of another race, and to question, is it true? So first we have to even notice when those unconscious thoughts come to the surface, to our awareness, pay attention, notice them, and then ask, is that true? And where is this rooted in my consciousness or my awareness? Interrogate our interior world and the inner narrative that we have about certain people, certain races, certain populations of people in this society. And then practice aligning with higher consciousness through meditation, contemplation, and prayer, so that our default reaction comes not from a place of defense or fear, but that we can come from a place of expanded consciousness. That is the opportunity we are presented with right now. How can we come from a place of expanded consciousness and look what is occurring in the world as an opportunity for growth and for change? And not to continue to cycle the same patterns, the same stories over and over and over. Yes. And then to take that into inspired action, asking always what is mine to do. Individually, we must ask what is mine to do and listen to that inspiration that is coming to us, but make sure we're not filtering it through our ego that wants to stay comfortable and safe and say, oh, I'll just sit here and I'll just pray. What I can do today is just pray. Pray. I'll just send thoughts and prayers. Everything's good. I'm just going to focus on the good. That's one step to expanding our consciousness, but then there's something moving within us to take inspired action. Speak up and to stand up for truth and for justice. Right now, our Black siblings need our love and support. They need us, white folks, to stand up, to speak up, to be allies, to do our own research, how we can be an effective ally, and to allow love to express through us in the most impactful way. And so where do we begin? In our own sphere of influence. On average, each person has at least 8 people in which they are close with, that we have close, personal, familiar, family relationships with. 8 people, at least, and many have more. This is where we start. Simply having conversations and exploring our own unconscious bias with those in which we are closest with. So think now, what is your sphere of influence? Is it in the public sector, through your work? Is it the education system? Is it the corporate world, the political world, your family world? What changes can you call for to create a more just society within your sphere of influence? And I know for me personally, I can get overwhelmed. I can think this problem is so big, the institutional racism, it's so deep, and it goes all the way back. How can I even make a dent in this? But that question is simply the ego of myself trying to stay comfortable and safe, and it's time to bust through that comfort zone. It is no longer serving. It is no longer serving. We must confront it. What is in front of us now? What is ours to do? So what I know is that I can call my elected officials. I can call out a racist joke, made in my presence. I can call out a racist comment on Facebook. I can engage in conversations with my immediate sphere of influence around unconscious bias. I can check in with my own unconscious bias. I can read and do research on the topic. I can check in on my Black friends and say, I hear you. I love you. I'm here. But not making it about me and saying, oh, I feel so sad. I'm embarrassed to be white. That's not effective. I'm going to show up and just simply be present and listen. Noticing my own unconscious bias, bringing it into the light of consciousness and choosing a new thought. That is how this global transformation through personal evolution starts. It starts right here by me challenging those thoughts and those unconscious bias. Because I am the hands and heart of God. Love is mine to do and be. Love is mine to do and be and do. Fierce love is what is being called right now. You know, I think sometimes we can get confused by this word love, and we can think love means being nice, being sweet. But love is a powerful force. Powerful. And sometimes love shows up as anger. My love for someone is so strong that I do not want to see them killed or murdered. So that love is showing up, and it might feel like anger as a catalyst to make a stand for something. So fierce love is what we are being called for right here, right now, to be the collective hands and hearts of God, of life, knowing that faith without works is dead.
You know, that all goes back to choice too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything is about choice. I choose today to be an ally. I choose today to talk to someone about their racial comments.
Mm-hmm.
I choose today to stand for love and in all of its, in all of its meaning. And the thing about choices, or the thing about choice, is that our choices influence our actions, and our actions have consequences. Sometimes we think of consequences as bad, but they can be good as well. You know, we can choose to do the right thing, that which we know in our heart to be true, or we can use our choices and actions in a destructive way. I love the story about Reverend Clary, because his choice in the beginning was destructive, was hate. And he turned his life around, and he chose love. And he chose to spread that love. The action that he took, the choice that he made, was to educate people on how to combat, interesting word I'm using, combat hate and racism. So we can choose to love and to recognize the oneness of all, or we can choose to create hate and to create separation, because that's the only thing that hate comes from, is separation. You see, it is the bridge from our wisdom heart. We've been talking about heart all month. It is the bridge from our wisdom heart to our humanness that takes us beyond the unknowable and connects us with all things. If we can, for a moment, stand in the power of our heart and not look at someone with judgment, but just for 1 minute, because I know we all judge and we all have judgments. That's the truth. You know, and as a white woman, it's my responsibility to look at my hidden biases, at how I show up in the world, and what's mine to do with all of that. And so it's from this place of being willing to look at all that. It's this place of knowingness that we will begin to surrender to the sacred and the wholeness of all of life. If we can just drop in for a moment and feel the heart, because the heart knows what it knows. It knows the right thing. And sometimes, you know, as we talked about before, not sometimes, a majority of the time, the heart influences the brain. And so it's here where we can embody love and begin to understand that part of the wholeness is the realization that above all else, we are the beloved. We're the truth keepers. That separation is simply an illusion. Whether it's an illusion for political gain, whatever that illusion may be, it is an illusion. So we must take the tools that we've been given as human beings, starting with this beautiful mind that we have. A mind to contemplate love, to meditate on peace, and to embody the oneness of all. A physical body to experience the world. We live in condition, you see. And it's a marriage between our spiritual self and our human self that is what I call enlightenment. That is the mystical marriage, the spiritual self and the human self, because the human self is living in conditions. It's not all good right now, folks. You know, Ernest Holmes said, we don't say there is peace when there is no peace. So we've got to go to this place of acknowledgement, of willingness to say the truth, to speak the truth, and then become the truth. You have your 5 senses to see, to hear, to feel, to taste, to touch. You have a mouth to speak words of love. You have hands to take action and to be of service to others, to be an ally. You can choose the right thing because it's never too late to be who you came here to be, which is love. You know, over the weekend, I heard someone say that everybody wants to be the butterfly. Everybody wants to rise above and be the beautiful butterfly, but nobody's willing to go to the cocoon and let go and let dissolve everything they thought was true and step into the truth. So this week, I invite you to really, really be willing to look at your hidden biases, to look at where love is not in your heart, and to really sit with that. Join our morning meditation Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and really get in touch with your soul and your heart and allow your brain to really do something that is yours to do. And we all know what it is. What is mine to do? Mine to do is to love and stand in the power of it.